thanks to the city of Peoria. You guys partnering with us is always a nice opportunity when we have public agencies or cities partnering on these projects. It's actually wonderfully useful for the students and gives a lot more structure to how they apply the content from the courses. So thanks. Just to give you guys a sense of the final steps here, the students are at the end of the semester. They're working on probably 4 or 5 different classes, projects, exams, things like that. But they're going to take the feedback that you've given them today. They'll incorporate that into their reports as sort of the finishing touches, the polishes. And those reports, I believe, will be formatted in your hands, edited, things like that, made to look nice and so on, at which point they'll be turned over. And at that point, I'm happy to offer that if you guys have any questions, any additional asks, I don't know whether or not we can do it, but please feel free to send it my way, and I'm happy to follow up with you. So thank you.
So I'll have Eric say a few words.
Thank you. That's it. No, this is really, as we mentioned earlier, when we started the whole endeavor, this one's near and dear to us for a variety of reasons. We've got the fixed route transit, we have POGO, and this will help us determine if there's a better path to providing transit services to our residents in Peoria. And that I really mean that, because this serves as a springboard. Many of you may not know, we recently had a local election, and we're going to have some different faces there. And a lot of the questions they have is on transit. How does it work? Why does it work? Why do we do things the way we do? And one of the things we've always wanted to do was kind of look at the micro portion of it. How do you get first and last mile done? Should you do it on demand? What are the different models out there? And I think between all of the endeavors here, it's a wonderful springboard to having that broader discussion. And with Jay Davies and Rhonda and whoever our new transit manager is going to be, it's a very exciting time for us. So what you've done is going to be extremely helpful. We don't have a habit of just putting this on the shelf and filing it away. We will put it to good work. We really will. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of the city of Peoria. And thank you for doing what you did. I think it's very revelatory, it's very timely, and it will be well received as we move down the road in our upcoming budget process. So thank you so much.
Hey everybody, we're group 2 from Arizona State University, and today we're going to be talking about how microtransit principles and best practices can be applied in Peoria, Arizona. I'm Ryan Barakat, and I'll begin talking about some demographics of Peoria. To start with, just some background, Peoria has around 195,000 residents, up about 1.5% from the previous year. There's a median age of around 40 and a household income of around $76,000. It is majority white, but there are large minority populations, mostly Hispanic, Asian, and Black or African American. Others include American Indians and others such as Pacific Islanders, Hawaiians, etc. The vast majority of residents are citizens at around 96%. However, around 10% of the population are foreign born. The majority of residents speak English, and 15% speak multiple, mostly Spanish at 8.4%. But however, most of those people are bilingual. And moving on to some transportation specific demographics. Peoria is a mostly suburban town, and this is important for looking at transportation solutions. It is a working class people who usually own their own houses at around 75% at a value of around $280,000. It's a very middle class area. You can tell by the average of 2 cars per household. The majority of people have to commute to work, usually to Phoenix, some offices, at around 30 minutes. And that's pretty important because the main challenge for public transportation is competing with the freedom of speed of private car transportation. So these demographics about the people of Peoria are probably some of the most important statistics when considering different solutions. And moving on from this, I'm gonna hand it off to Sarah and Peyton to talk about some case studies.
Thanks, Ryan. So in studying microtransit opportunities for Peoria, we also considered a few different rideshare services that were offered around the US. So here we have Chariot and Translock, which were both partnered with Ford. So Chariot offered fixed route services, and Translock was a service that creates simulations to assess specific microtransit implementations in areas that would be probabilistically successful in the pilot cities. So what's unique about Chariot is its ability to provide its users with the ability to reserve a seat in the bus that's coming up on the fixed route. So as compared to normal buses, you'd have to wait until the bus is either in sight or within distance and see if you can actually get on or if it's full. VIA was a non-fixed route service, which also provided trips to nearby airports. VIA was not partnered with surrounding public transport systems, so it ended up becoming competition for other services as users flocked to either one or the other services and ended up causing more congestion in the cities that it was implemented. And Adam is going to continue to talk about Bridge later on, but Bridge was a failed rideshare service that was founded in 2014. It was not partnered with a car manufacturer or with the public transport systems that were already in place. So it was extremely difficult to overcome capital expenses. So there's an overall theme of the necessity to either partner with the city or partner with public transport systems, as well as using apps when implementing microtransit into the city.
So when considering microtransit for Peoria, a big thing to consider is the cost. Looking at the numbers listed above, we can see that previous cities have not yet made a profit on doing this. However, even though no profit has been made yet, these states have been very clear that these case studies are very promising and something that their local government is seriously considering to budget for. A big reason microtransit is being implemented into society is not due to financial reasons, but rather transportation planning. Microtransit has helped reduce the number of cars on the road over short distances. This is a big deal not only for the environment, but also traffic within these localized areas. Now, all these are just sample sizes of a much larger budget. And even though a profit has not yet been turned, that doesn't mean that eventually it won't. These cities seem to be very excited about the turnout of these experiments. Now I will be handing it over to Adam to talk about failures in microtransit.
Hello. So when looking at microtransit and how to implement it in the city of Peoria, it's important to see what to avoid and what we can do, what lessons we can learn from others' failures. In Kansas City, Bridge was a one-year-based pilot program that implemented 14-person passenger vans in Kansas City. It saw 1,500 riders in its first year, and it cost the city $1.5 million, with an average subsidy of $1,000 per ride. Now, this was obviously a big failure, and the program was shut down after that year pilot program, but what can we learn from that? The first thing we can learn is that microtransit has to be treated as a public subsidy rather than an income-generating operation. So the citizens of Peoria are going to have to understand that it will rely on their tax dollars in order to be a successful program. Additionally, we have to understand that this tech-based company is going to have to partner with the local transportation authorities, namely Valley Metro. In most successful microtransit operations, the tech company had to have a healthy relationship with that local transportation authority in order to see increased ridership share and profitability. I'll be handing off the next slide to Emil.
Microtransit principles in Peoria will start with the analysis of Peoria, so like their demographics, how many people use public transportation on a daily basis, and what areas of Peoria use it the most. This will give us a starting point in where microtransit could start and expand from there. Key points to take note of are locations that are distant from bus stops and the common locations of interest which people like to go to. Another aspect to account for is the current fixed routes. So the bus routes that are being used right now and their schedules, there's a certain time frame in which they do service, and then that time frame is reduced during peak hours. Next slide, please. Once everything is analyzed and evaluated, the experimentation process of implementing microtransit can be done. This is done by testing out different aspects. So like the number of seats per vehicle, you don't want to have too little or too many, just because too little would be inefficient and too many would have longer wait times for people. And then also we must do different types of training so that the people operating the vehicles do it in a safe manner, just because the lives of the public are on the line. And then adjusting the fares so that it's both reasonable and profitable. As Peyton said earlier, cities have not made profit out of microtransit. And the rest is just experimenting with different time frames. So working with and apart from the bus routes and slowly expanding towards the rest of the city. And then I'll hand it over to Zeke for the marketing.
So when it comes to the implementation of microtransit, first you want to specify your target demographics. We're not going to be able to hit everyone, of course, with this implementation. So you want to specify who exactly will be the target audience for this, whether it's young or old, or your students, or your commuting workers. Now, when you're implementing your microtransit, you also want to make sure you brainstorm with the community. This cannot just be a project where you take all your ideas. You have to include what the community wants to see and what they'll say will they believe will help them access this service easier. And you also want to increase your guys' physical awareness on things. So this includes things such as physical ads and social media interaction. You want to be able to make sure that, yes, you're implementing this good idea, but you also want to make sure that people know about this good idea, because this is one of the protruding failures of failed initiatives is, yeah, it existed, but people didn't know about its existence in the first place. Slide, please. And so every good successful initiative was built around the backbone of having app development. So anything like Uber or Lyft, imagine that, but for your on-demand service. So with this microtransit initiative, you must have software procurement. There is no other way. Now, how you do this software procurement, you'll have some different options. You can do it web-based, where people will book online through their browser. You can have a mobile app where it's instantaneous, or you can even have a call option for people who want that human-to-human interaction. Whatever the case, you will have to implement an app-based service for this. And I'm going to hand it off to our next members for some data from some additional studies we've done.
So for some additional data to consider is there's 2 studies done, one in the East Gainesville and one in Montgomery County. East Gainesville's in Florida, Montgomery County's in Maryland. The East Gainesville study sought to explore opportunities for people who had to rely on public transit. And then Montgomery County also focused on people who relied on public transit. 70% of households in East Gainesville made under $25,000 a year, while in Montgomery County, a good stat was that 69% of the morning trips would end at a metro station and 59% in the evening would start at a metro station. Next slide, please. So some results from these studies are very important to consider. Then East Gainesville, they were averaging $72 per hour, and they had a fare box cost predicted, and it was predicted to be low at best if they're operating at full capacity. This study actually recommended another pilot project just to analyze the cost, because they were afraid that the public would not like it if they had the current cost analysis done. It also showed, though, that microtransit can be used as a replacement or a supplement for transit in East Gainesville. The Montgomery County study was noted that midday operations were very inconvenient because most people used it to get to and from work. And then about 20% of Rockville trips had one passenger or more than one passenger, and about 6% in Wheaton had more than one passenger. So most of the time there was about one passenger on the ride. Next slide, please. So with all the data compiled through every study that was presented here today, we have some opportunities and recommendations for Peoria. The first recommendation is to make their operating hours during the when most people are commuting. So like not just a typical 8 to 5. Some people start work at 6, some people start work at 10. Just make it during peak commuting hours. Use shuttle buses or vans that can hold 10 to 12 people and have wheelchair spots accessible on all the vans for people who need to rely on public transit with wheelchairs. Use it in localized areas like Westgate, because that would be a very popular area where lots of people could, I guess at their own free will, be relying on public transit. You have to understand the current bus and metro routes, how they work, how they're used, and their stopping and starting points. And then it's recommended to do at least 2 pilot projects. The first one for an initial data collection, use that data to optimize it, and then do a second pilot project to make sure the optimization worked.
And I just want to say, on behalf of all the group members, thank you so much for working with us this semester, and we look forward to speaking with the City of Peoria on November 30th.
Welcome, and thank you for tuning in to our Project Cities presentation. We're going to be talking about transit adoption on a regional scale and see how shared mobility fares as a microtransit option. So to establish a narrative, we first pose this specific research question. How does Peoria engage its non-typical transit riders to motivate them to use microtransit? The overarching goal is to increase transit adoption and increase access to this public transit system. And there may be several gaps to fill that's addressed by what's known as the first mile, last mile service model. And microtransit may be able to fill that gap. So we explore shared mobility as a microtransit implementation. Now there are different forms of shared mobility, such as carpooling, car sharing, bike sharing, micromobility, taxis, ride hailing like Uber and Lyft, shuttles, etc. But we're going to be agnostic in our reference to shared mobility and refer to it without specifying a specific form. So here's the outline. We're going to go over the high-level description of our project and identify the research tasks that we've undertaken, the process by which we've conducted our research, the results and findings that we've gathered, and finally the recommendations that we formulated. So Peoria, a city in Maricopa County, is a major suburb of Phoenix, and its landscape is rapidly evolving with an automobile-centric transportation design. And one of the key concerns for Peoria is to target these non-typical transit riders using microtransit. And we've identified several critical factors that play a large role in shaping microtransit in our discussion of transit adoption. And our team does a deep dive into each of the critical factors to present our argument for the benefits of microtransit and shared mobility. So our process starts with defining and narrowing the scope of the task, starting with the research question and identifying the relevant critical factors that I've mentioned. And then the literature review is the main method of research, which consisted of synthesis and analysis of information extracted from case studies, peer review papers, journal articles, etc. And finally, we can compile our findings and results and formulate our recommendations from that.
Peoria is a densely populated city in the southern region due to the location of Lake Pleasant, thus impacting microtransit. Regional accessibility can be shown in the figure to the right, where red and yellow zonings are within close proximity of each other, typically representing an activity center such as Old Town or the Loop 303 within a reasonable distance to residential development. However, there are areas in Peoria with single zoning in the northwest and mid-east. This land use design impacts trip length and mode choice and would thus benefit from the idea of a 20-minute city that develops residential zoning around local assets within a 20-minute travel range. Centricity is the idea of increasing the amount of jobs available in activity centers that can aid in the idea of building a 20-minute city, since local residents would benefit from local opportunities of employment. A complete community would focus on centricity and regional accessibility by maximizing shared induced travel destinations when designing land use combinations. Therefore, the proximity of necessary destinations and residential areas would increase and maximize shared mobility.
A literature review was performed to identify key sustainability components. A transit system must reduce vehicle and energy usage, understand its users, inspire trust, and promote cooperation. Transit goals should include ridership and accessibility. Increasing transit service and enabling high population density helps achieve both these goals. A framework should be developed to evaluate sustainability environmentally, socially, and economically.
The introduction of a microtransit system in the city of Peoria will allow for the improvement of safety in the public transportation system overall. This will be done through the reduction of drunk drivers on the streets. It will also provide more reliable drivers than Uber and Lyft can offer. It'll reduce the amount of crime occurring at bus stops. And lastly, it'll eliminate the walk in between your home and the bus stops themselves.
We're talking about the economic cost. There'll be huge cuts in costs in gas, car insurance, and parking. This shared mobility is fairly cheap, and new and used cars are very expensive nowadays. The more we use this system of shared mobility, the more we can integrate and add more tools. Roadways are a huge cost to taxpayers and cities. There will be huge cuts in costs for construction, repaving, and resurfacing. The driver can also make some extra income, and the company will create jobs for implementation. On the right, you can see that really for shared mobility, there's only overhead and salaries, and the user can save money on everything else.
Implementation comes in two forms, planning and technology. The planning aspect analyzes how to connect surrounding areas to the existing macro transit. Circulatory systems operate on fixed routes and schedules, while on-demand systems allow the user to call and order a vehicle. Often the on-demand systems compete with the circulation systems when they operate at the same time, so the goal is to create synergy. Peoria's paratransit system Dial a Ride requires scheduling a day in advance, which is inaccessible. In terms of technology, users highly value accurate GPS and reliable schedules, so they are properly informed and know what to expect. They tend to prefer apps because of ease of access, navigation, and reliability. Sacramento did a survey on their microtransit system and found the greatest deterrent to microtransit use was due to the high wait times, and the greatest encourager of microtransit was closeness to pickup and drop-off locations.
The next topic of discussion is ADA compliance and accommodations. When you look at the Peoria demographics, it is found that about 17% are over the age of 65 and an additional 8% are under 65 but disabled. The current mode of mobility for these individuals is paratransit. In this case, there is a special service that can be called to pick up these individuals and drive them from their origin to destination. Peoria has practiced with autonomous ride sharing with their pilot program, RoboRide, being a shuttle around the health district. This was a success, but could use some additional improvements to ensure inclusivity.
My research focused on identifying the demographics of non-typical transit riders and their preferences for a microtransit service. I found that elderly and disabled people uniquely chose microtransit services over traditional public transit because of the convenience of reduced walking times and ADA compliance. Other potential transit riders who typically use another form of transportation had a distinct preference for personal comfort and reliable timing, which microtransit has the ability to offer. Additionally, a successful microtransit service has been shown to offer more access to job opportunities, healthcare, and other activities, which would give it a niche over traditional transit.
So now we'll look at how public agencies form partnerships with private mobility on-demand providers like Uber and Lyft. And when they integrate their services, we'll see how these public-private partnerships impact transit ridership. So first off, we see how Dallas Area Rapid Transit integrated with on-demand microtransit provided by Uber, which has improved the first mile, last mile accessibility to low-density areas. Similarly, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority integrated private microtransit services to provide paratransit services to disabled riders and increase demand by 28%, reduce overall program costs by 6%, and reduce total trip time by over 50%. We have a couple of case studies where they saw low demand due to lack of marketing strategy that's crucial in promoting awareness of its services among potential riders.
Final recommendations for safety. It is most important that City of Peoria advertise to its citizens that the microtransit system will make public transportation a much safer activity. There's a large stigma around public transportation, and they need to be able to know that it will be much safer now. We will also need to back this up by providing safe and reliable drivers or considering using autonomous vehicles instead to provide a safe ride. Lastly, we'll need to create a system similar to that of Uber and Lyft, where the user can personalize where they get picked up, dropped off, and when.
My recommendations for the city of Peoria is to begin reorganizing the future layout of the pre-existing 2040 master plan to represent a 20-minute city ideology. Although this transition may be a slow process, it is expected to keep stakeholders, the city council, and local residents such as the homeowners association involved to optimize the intended results of increasing community revenue, motivating foot traffic, reducing travel distances, and improving public transit access. It is also always recommended to invest in proper road connectivity as well as abundant sidewalk access when beginning regional accessibility design. This will promote the beginning stages of pedestrianization as well as improve access to public transit.
Some recommendations for ADA compliance are assuring all vehicles are up to standards. Some things to include are easily deployable ramps and on-vehicle securement for wheelchairs. Technology should also be up to date to assist those with visual and auditory impairment. These aspects should be included on all microtransit services.
To increase ridership and accessibility, the city of Peoria should identify important destinations and vulnerable populations, allocate rides to improve access and sustainability, and continue to expose its citizens to new technologies. To address longevity, the city can implement a system to measure success and emphasize population density as it grows.
For recommendations, I think that the city of Peoria should advertise to its citizens the cost benefits as well as the prices for average trip lengths for like 5-10 minutes, so that they know how much on average they'll be spending. It'll give them, I think they should have a sense of understanding of how easy the app can be to use, especially for older crowds. Handing out incentives like free rides and gift cards, I think would be really beneficial to get people in the door. Maybe something that they're passionate about, something that has to do with the community would be really cool for them. And then I think that as far as personal vehicles, they can save almost $1 really compared to personal vehicles that using shared mobility and a form of autonomous shared mobility. And then it's concluded that if someone drives less than 10,000 miles a year, they should just get rid of their car in most cases. And I think that Peoria can give riders financial safety, knowing exactly how much they're spending on this shared mobility system compared to insurance rates can go up, gas prices can go up, getting tickets, things like that, where you're just so unknown of what you're going to spend. This system, everybody will know what they're spending.
Comfort and reliability are the highest implementation concerns. In high-density areas, a neighborhood circulatory system is recommended with consistent schedules at predetermined locations. In low-density areas and disability systems, a rapid response on-call system is recommended with lower wait times and less advance notice required. An algorithm will be implemented to determine the most efficient routes when multiple people call the service. In high-density areas, there will be a hybrid of collector and on-call routes. The same routes will run but with less frequency, and people will be able to call a ride. An app will be developed with a list of automatically updating schedules and a live map so that users can always see where the next vehicle is. A contact button will allow users to either call or instant message the service, allowing users to order new rides or report issues. For people who aren't as tech savvy, the live map will be implemented with Google Maps, and a website will show the schedules and locations. Users can dial a phone call to order rides or report issues.
So finally, we have recommendations from the perspectives of the public-private partnerships. From the case studies, we can take away some lessons. The routing and ride matching software is a critical asset provided by the private partners, and they have to be planned and deployed early, and the technology has to be in place because we don't want bad user experiences to turn potential riders away from the service. We want extensive educational outreach to promote awareness and transparency because building user trust is crucial to the pervasive adoption of this service. Public policy restrictions may prevent regional collaboration, so we're going to need policy changes, especially when it comes to data sharing strategies. Agency-operated models can retain control by only employing private services for overflow services during peak periods. And lastly, you want to protect the fixed route services when integrating shared services so as to not undermine your public transit system. And that is it for our presentation. Thank you for your time.
We are 8 students from Dr. Chester's Transportation Systems Planning class, and we studied the factors for success when implementing a microtransit solution in Peoria. I'm Abby Dirks, and I'll be covering the introduction. We'll follow this with the methodology, findings, and recommendations. We believe microtransit is a solution for travel in areas poorly served by public transit. And Peoria wants to know what factors are needed for success when implementing such a solution in their city. Specifically, they want to move individuals from low density northern areas of the city to the higher density south areas of the city.
Hello, I'm Garrett Otting, and I will start with a literature review for this methodology section. First, we must define what success and failure looks like for this project. The most successful aspect is holding the paramount the safety, health, and well-being of the public, with the second most important success being having a flexibility schedule to be able to work with the public work schedule and day-to-day activities. And constant analysis will ensure long-term success. The biggest failure would be low ridership, whether that's from a lack of public awareness or a lack of safety or indirect routes. Next will be Thomas with the roundtable.
To provide the city with appropriate recommendations, we held a roundtable with the Peoria officials, Jay Davies and Rhonda Humboldt, to cover the 6 categories of questions that we had, which included the definition of short versus long-term success, meeting the city of Peoria's project goals, project boundaries and barriers to success, demographics of interest, encouraging use of service, and prioritizing environmental sustainability.
Now our findings that we have found for our successes in microtransit. When asked about their successes in microtransit, Denver RTD officials outlined what they focus on for success, outlining them as providing flexible service, moving away from fixed route service, which doesn't always meet customer demands, focusing on last and first minute miles for rider transit uses. In order to deem a successful microtransit, it has to be designed with the community in mind. As for failures, we can take a look at Kansas City's attempts at microtransit. During their pilot year, they only completed 1,400 rides despite offering 10 rides for free. Failure of microtransits can be caused by many things, including success metrics that aren't agreed upon by stakeholders, unrealistic goals, failures in marketing. In some scenarios, microtransit fails simply because there isn't a demand for it within the community. In order to properly gauge success and failures, it is important to evaluate the proper metrics. Proper metrics are dependent upon the community that it is serving and the goals set forth by the city or company putting the microtransit in place. This can include, but isn't limited to, ridership, cancellation rates, ride and wait times, and the ability to connect to other modes of transportation.
To ensure transparency between government and residents during this construction process, we want to have constant upfront and back-end discussions. So we're going to focus on inclusion throughout the process, which can mean anything from regular updates and meetings to other things. And we're going to try to stress a rotating door policy as opposed to an open door, which means there's discussions going from residents to members of government who are planning stuff, and then back to residents in the public who actually use the surface. So we get to a very cooperative and conclusive solution. And so this is going to be an iterative process that builds on itself. And it's not just going to be once we construct it, we're going to forget about it. We're going to continue to update and iterate it to get the best success.
Hello, I'm Chris Okonya, and I'm going to be going over short and long-term success. Elements of short-term success include implementing a test or pilot program for microtransit to identify how a full-scale system could be implemented and integrated into the existing network, improving the ridership of the existing network by allowing for a more flexible and broad transit network by facilitating first and last mile travel, garnering interest in microtransit and finding partners to get a physical system implemented as rapidly as possible, and collecting data that will be valuable for the long-term success of the project. Long-term success will include seeing continued growth of the system. Additionally, it will be low or no cost to operate while simultaneously providing riders with an affordable option. It ideally will be a system structured as a public-private partnership, allowing for a minimization in costs and access to increased financing, while benefiting from an alternative managerial structure, increased public perception, and increased efficiency. Finally, increasing the areas that are available to access public transit, allowing for solutions to reach areas of Peoria currently unserved by the network due to Peoria's unique shape.
All right, so for meeting Peoria's goals, some of the main goals of microtransit are cost efficiency, consumer friendliness, optimized, and something people will actually use. My good friend Garrett already went into these points, so what I want to talk about is how to achieve these goals. The first one is to look at what other cities have done. Hannah has already mentioned that a good city to look at is Denver. They're very successful in the microtransit. The second one is improve what citizens are already doing. Right now, there's very little microtransit in Peoria. So the people in the north are finding ways to get to the south. And I think looking at what they're doing and implementing it into our system would be very good and for the system as a whole. The third is micromobility, like e-bikes and e-scooters versus microtransit, like autonomous electronic vans. I think implementing a hybrid of both and learning which places need which one would be very beneficial as well. The fourth and final one, which is probably the most important, is constant feedback from the people using the microtransit system to help it as a whole. So yeah, I'll leave it to Abby.
Some specific barriers in Peoria that were concerns include car-centric attitudes, income gaps between residents, a silent minority who needs the service but doesn't speak out, and then constant change in growth of the city, such as a constantly growing population. And ways to address these barriers early on so they don't become issues later on is to incentivize the solution, especially to car users, to maximize inclusivity of the service, and to prioritize continuous project learning throughout the life of the project.
Hello, I'm Fatima Safid. When asked about the specific demographics of interest that they wanted to target from City of Peoria, they said that they wanted to include all ages and all demographics. From COVID-19 impacted the transportation system a lot. So we want to address that. And there was a lot of people who needed transportation but did not have any means to transport. So we want to address that as well, such as using e-scooter and autonomous vehicles. Next slide, please. We want to also encourage the use of service through public outreach and public education. Lots of people do not realize the cost that is associated with the use of private vehicles, such as depreciating the vehicle cost over time and use of transportation infrastructure. So we want to educate them about those costs that are associated with the use of their own vehicles, and we want to reach out to them through social media to teach them about these microtransit that are in use. I'm going to pass it on to Thomas.
Implementing this project can be more than just convenience for the city and its residents. According to the American Lung Association, the Phoenix area has received failing grades in regards to ozone and particle pollution due to growing population and therefore increased emissions. Therefore, we recommend seeking partnerships with clean fuel companies such as Beep, with whom the city has already successfully partnered with in the past.
All right, kind of tying this all together, getting to our recommendations moving forward. From our findings, from our roundtable, everything has kind of led us to these 6 main goals. So we want to increase use through wide marketing and incentivization, however that is. We want to maximize inclusivity for all, so that more people can get involved. We want to qualitatively track success and implement continuous learning. Prioritize safety for all above all else. Try to implement alternative fuels for long-term success, and design with the community in mind, include residents in planning. Getting back to that constant feedback so we can get to a long-term successful solution that will see us into the future and into that changing situation in Peoria. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. This is our presentation on microtransit, the study for the city of Peoria. My name is Alejandro Carranza.
I'm Jonathan Alarcon.
I'm Matt Peterson.
I'm Eric Limon Mijades.
I'm Ramiro Pojan.
I'm Nick Sharpman.
And I'm Marcos Garcia.
All right, so throughout this presentation, we're going to talk about what are transit deserts. Then we're going to move on to the literature review. We're going to talk about methods and processes, down to the analysis. We're going to give recommendations, and then from there, we're going to conclude our presentation. Next slide.
Thanks, Alejandro. So first, the main concept that we're talking about for our study is transit deserts. The definition for transit deserts are where the supply of transportation is low, but the demand is high. Why do these transit deserts exist? Most of the time, these transit deserts exist because the city is not able to allocate these resources to those specific areas. Common areas where they occur, the most common areas that our group decided these transit deserts occur are in low income areas, as well as areas that are further away from the center of the city. Why is it difficult to spot these transit deserts? It's often difficult because it can be hard to determine who relies mostly on mass transit. Next slide, please. Now, why does this matter to the city of Peoria? The public transit usage is very low. Looking at the table to the right, the city of Tempe is currently the highest, while Peoria is the lowest. Now, why is that such a big issue? It's costing people's health. Many people are simply not able to get the medical attention that they require, since the nearest medical center can be far or any special medical center might be out of reach. Another issue with the public transit usage being low is when transportation supply is high, it allows people to explore more opportunities for jobs in different areas, which can help you increase your overall household income. Next slide, please.
So after conducting some research on what other areas are doing to mitigate transit deserts, we found that some areas are partnering with transportation network companies, which are otherwise known as TNCs. What most areas we saw and studied are doing is they're partnering with the major TNCs, which are Uber and Lyft. And the main objective is to lower the cost in areas with transit deserts. So, for example, in 2017, the District of Denver launched 3 rail lines and a new bus line in their transit system. To alleviate connectivity issues with transit deserts, they decided to partner with Lyft in a 6-month pilot program where people living in these areas would get free rides to and from the stations. The results suggested that in doing this, TNCs could work as a supplement to the already existing transit lines. Another example could also be Lyft shuttles. The way these work is that a group of people are picked up in a certain area, and in doing so, the group gets a lower cost. Next slide, please. A different approach many cities, including Phoenix, are taking are neighborhood circulators. Essentially, these circulators are mini buses that connect residential areas with arterials, popular destination, or larger transit systems like bus stops or train stops, like in Tempe. Currently, these circulators are popular in college campuses, hence Tempe has some of these, as well as East Glendale. Next slide, please.
So something that Tempe is doing right now is taking advantage of driverless vehicles or autonomous vehicles, where automated ride sharing can provide affordable transport rather than introducing entire new public transportation infrastructure. The purpose of these vehicles would be to connect a gap between transit deserts and existing transportation infrastructure. So to kind of alleviate that last mile problem and transport these people to existing transportation infrastructure. This would help alleviate strain on other transit systems. And the Tempe has already started implementing pilot scale autonomous vehicles, such as the use of Waymo, which study we use to substantiate this project. Next slide, please.
So another thing cities are doing, or like towns, they're implementing e-scooters. And what e-scooters allow is they allow for mobility when a bus isn't an option. So it's like a quick option to go from one point to, usually they're short distances. So it would work like for the city of Tempe, they would use these for the college students, a lot of them would use it to get from a certain street to another one. It wasn't like a far distance thing. And thoughts are relatively cheap. They don't cost that much to rent. Like you can rent them for a certain amount of time. It's usually like not too expensive. It's pretty affordable. And the demographics are usually younger people. They're the ones that usually utilize these e-scooters. Next slide, please.
So once we figured out, okay, here's what's going on, here's the existing things, there was a couple of things that we needed to find out as far as our research goes. First and foremost, since we're dealing with transit deserts, we need to find them within the city limits. So I'm a licensed and active real estate agent within the state of Arizona. I have access to the ARM list, which is the Arizona Multiple Listing System. Under that, I have access to monsoon tax data, which allows me to see within a 2 to 5 mile radius the average household income in selected areas. So the first figure you see there, the one with the green, red, and yellow, that is taking a sampling of the city limits and finding out, okay, these are the areas that green is considered high income. So it's about 90,000 or more. The yellow areas are our middle class areas, and then the red areas are low income areas. It's important to note that it's just because there's only these three distinctions doesn't mean that it's as cut and dry. The green areas aren't all incredibly affluent. There is still middle class. And the yellow areas still do have a little bit of upper class, but it is mostly middle class. Once we figured out, okay, this is what we're doing, this is what the area looks like, we had the assumption that the lower income class were the ones that would most likely need to use the public transit. So we then figured out, okay, the circulators and the transit vehicles that we have in the area so far are Valley Metro and the POGO destinations. We figured out, okay, the services are serving mostly the southern part, the central, and then the north. If you're on either east or west of the central part of the city, you're not really being served by POGO, and Valley Metro is a little shady given in the fact that Peoria is on the outskirts of the city. Our philosophy was that if other cities have already taken it about themselves to start from scratch and try certain different microtransit options, we're going to base part of our suggestions to Peoria off of what other cities have done, like Waymo, Chariot, and other things, to save Peoria the growing pains of failures at times that other cities had to go through. Next slide. And here is just a quick sampling of what that monsoon tax neighborhood data looked like. You can see realistically you have a peak at 50 to 75,000 and then 100 150,000, where it's really only by a little bit the 150,000 is winning out. So these areas aren't as cut and dry as we'd like, but then at the same time, our assumption that it's lower income people that will mostly use microtransit comes from the graph at the right that says, as you see in the city of Sacramento, for those $30,000 and less, public transit is a significant part of their transportation mode. Next slide.
As Jonathan mentioned, a lot of our analysis came from kind of analyzing existing systems that were already implemented in other cities. And one of these we found out was implementing rideshare programs, such as Lyft and Uber into the public transit system. We found out with more efficient advertising, we could reach a broader range of people. For example, a large demographic that use rideshare is younger students, about 18 to 22 was one of the largest ranges. So if we could kind of target our advertising, could potentially bring in a lot more users for rideshare. And subsidization would also provide a pretty big incentive for ride sharing, making it a little more cheaper and desirable for the consumer. And another thing we found in our research was comfort and usability was ranked pretty high amongst users that already participate in rideshare programs. So if we could focus on increasing the comfort and usability, for example, in the app, if it's easy to order and easy to book a ride, it's more likely to be appealing to the customer. Another area of analysis was autonomous vehicles. One of the main pilot studies we used as reference was Waymo in Tempe. And utilizing autonomous vehicles can be beneficial because it connects transit deserts to existing transit routes. And one of the goals actually that ASU saw through this program was creating 20-minute neighborhoods. And it just basically provides a link between areas that are cut off from transit, or a transit desert, to existing transit lines. So just a link that connects. Again, the ease of ordering and privacy was rated very important amongst existing Waymo riders. So optimizing the interface and ensuring comfortability is crucial in incentivizing this.
So as mentioned before, ride sharing, this is going to be one of our first recommendations for the city of Peoria to take. Partnering with another transportation network company such as Lyft, Uber, or Waymo to help people get around Peoria would be a great idea for the city to take on. Right now, there's a lot of transit deserts in which people can't get around the city, and it's really just the fact that like the people who live in these transit deserts often don't have vehicles, and there's not really a consistent circulatory system to get them to where they need. So if Peoria subsidized the prices of like a TNT, it would really help many people get around. The thing is that we'd have to advertise it to everyone. Right now, mainly a lot of these ride sharing services are used by a much younger generation. We'd have to advertise this to let everyone know that it's available to use. A lot of older generations tend to avoid ride sharing since they see it as kind of intimidating to approach. But if we advertise it as something that's very user friendly, cheap, and an efficient way to get around Peoria, we can really help people escape the transit deserts and get to areas where they really need to be. Next slide. Our second recommendation is just already improving the current systems that are in play, like the POGO system that is in Peoria right now. We think the best way to improve it would be by having more dynamic routes. So if a survey was done every quarter to see which areas of Peoria need the circulator, as since a city is ever changing and people get cars or they lose their cars, lose access to their like transit. We think that having a circulatory system that's more dynamic and changes with the needs of the city will help reduce transit deserts heavily. And also this will just encourage people to just take the circulatory system besides driving, since not everyone can drive at all times due to like financial or medical reasons. This is just a way that people could get around Peoria without having to rely so much on their car. Next slide.
So our third recommendation for leaving these transit deserts is to introduce autonomous vehicles. Problem shared by the last two recommendations is that they rely on drivers able to provide these services, whereas using a rideshare service or introducing a neighborhood circulator will acquire available drivers, which then requires a microtransit schedule. But many affected by the last mile problem are not needing transportation services daily, and trying to schedule these drivers might be an issue. With the use of rideshare service like Lyft, as mentioned in the first recommendation, it will be hard to motivate Lyft drivers to accommodate towards microtransit users, as their trips will probably be shorter than normal Lyft users. And for many, it really will just be this last mile, making these trips less profitable for the drivers, of course, unless proper incentives are given. But apart from those using microtransit for commuting to their jobs or for other essential daily tasks, a large percentage of microtransit users will not use these services regularly. These people might need a service to get themselves to the airport, going to the dentist, visiting family, or other infrequent tasks. Trying to accommodate to the scheduling or lack thereof could pose an issue. This is an issue fixed by autonomous vehicles. With these AVs, apart from the maintenance and sanitation of these vehicles, there is no need for humans to be on call to provide this service. Allowing people to be able to have microtransit services that cater to them whenever they want and wherever they want. As seen in our research, the transit deserts in Peoria are spread out and mostly reside in middle-class neighborhoods, because we found that although lower income communities might rely on public transportation more as private transportation is unaffordable for them. Fortunately, these communities are already being catered to with existing public transportation networks, and they center around these low-income areas. So in Peoria, by comparing the Valley Metro and POGO bus routes, public transportation focuses on these communities, those living near Grand Avenue and where the 101 north to south turns to the 101 east to west. By utilizing the monsoon neighborhood data, these communities were found to be low income. Many of Peoria's middle income neighborhoods are separated from these areas, as the majority of these neighborhoods are miles north from where the upper limit of the Valley Metro service is located. POGO attempted to cater towards this problem with the introduction of the red and blue lines. This service is ineffective due to a narrow spread and distant spacing of these destinations. With autonomous vehicles, however, the difficulties found in trying to cater towards every last person needing microtransit in these spread out suburban neighborhoods is no longer an issue. Riders will be able to request pickup from these autonomous vehicles in front of their homes, as reach is no longer an issue either. Another concern that autonomous vehicles alleviate is the potential for overcrowding on existing public transportation. As seen in our second recommendation with the crowdsourced neighborhood circulators, these circulators will solve that last mile problem. We'll now be adding many more people to the existing services. This might decrease the quality of services for those that use them regularly, and as they will now be more crowded. Although this will probably not be an issue, as the need for microtransit is found by many not needing to use the service regularly, it is still a potential problem that we thought should be mentioned. But finally, we recommend that the city of Peoria should partner with a service like Waymo, which already has a foothold in Tempe and is seeking to emerge into the ride-sharing arena. With this partnership, Waymo services will be showcased to the general public. In fact, the audience that will be introduced to the service is the same audience that Waymo is seeking to cater to. There's still a lot of unfounded stigma regarding the safety of autonomous vehicles, and we believe that this partnership will help break that. The luxury and safety of AVs will be shown to the general public this way, and we see this as an effective advertising campaign for Waymo. If this promotion is not enough, however, we thought that maybe the city could provide additional tax incentives for Waymo trips within city boundaries, but details on this arrangement will require additional planning. Next slide, please.
All right, so to conclude, three main things we found through research that are going to most benefit existing transit deserts and hopefully prevent them in the future was properly advertised and subsidized rideshare methods. This will allow ride shares to happen more often and connect existing transit to transit deserts. Another one we found was crowdsourcing. As Eric mentioned, we want to pinpoint the areas that need the transit the most and shift resources from overused areas to these underused areas. And we could find out where those are based on crowdsourcing methods. And finally, partnering with autonomous vehicles. This would provide another alternative mode of transport, and it would also provide incentive for the private companies to come in because they want to further their research and implementation. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you very much.
Hello, in this video, we are going to talk about the way to integrate the microtransit into the current transportation system. Several things will be stressed here: current system analysis, benchmarking, and finally, recommendation. First, what is microtransit? It is a mode of transportation between private cars and fixed route buses. It provides a semi-customized service for travelers to save both time and money. The traveler only needs to specify their basic travel information such as time, region, and destination. Then, the transportation management system can form an optimum route based on the demand within that period of time.
So now to get into some background on existing public transit options Peoria currently offers. So the first is the dial-a-ride system. So this is geared towards ADA and paratransit users. However, anyone can use this service. So there are different fee levels based on whether you're ADA certified or not, but all of them are relatively low, as you can see on the slide. So the dial-a-ride will take people around the city of Peoria and to medical facilities in Sun City and Glendale. So another existing system is the Peoria on the Go buses, or POGO. These buses visit 10 major locations in the city from Park West to Old Town Peoria. However, the stops are only these 10 major locations, and the buses only run Friday to Sunday, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. So the last existing public service in Peoria is the fixed bus route on the Valley Metro buses. So there are 6 fixed bus routes, and they serve the entire city, but to get across the entire city would require changing bus routes based on the direction that you're going. But all 3 of these are currently what Peoria offers to help residents get around the city and lower emissions of personal vehicles.
Some quick information about cities that already have operational microtransit systems. The first is the city of Chandler, which started their Chandler Flex program in the beginning of 2022. The Chandler Flex program is a rideshare van service that was actually designed to address the needs of transportation demands due to recent school bus driver shortages. The program is specifically geared towards students who live outside normal bus routes or need rides to and from school outside normal bus hours. So because of this, the program is completely free to students. Next, we have the cities of Avondale and Goodyear, which have a microtransit service called WeRide that serves both cities. This microtransit program is also a rideshare van service, but they have created what they call virtual stops, which are locations throughout the city that help consolidate passengers. Using virtual stops, passengers aren't taken door to door, but instead they travel to a location where they're all pooled together for faster and more convenient pickup and drop off. Next, the city of Tolleson has done something really different, which is utilize the current rideshare services, Uber and Lyft. So with this program, all passengers traveling within the city of Tolleson city limits pay a base fare of $2 per trip, and the city will pay the rest of the fare up to $15 per trip. So there's currently no maximum number of trips per day per rider.
So another city that has conducted research into microtransit is actually the city of Peoria in Illinois. So they did a mass transit study breaking the city up into zones to determine the best location for adding microtransit to their city. So their city setup is actually very similar to the city of Peoria in Arizona, with less dense northern portion and a more dense around their downtown area. And both cities are relatively spread out. So the study looked into socioeconomic, vehicle ownership, and density demographics in order to determine where best to integrate microtransit. So this study gave us an idea on how to collect data to do our own integration study.
Our research on the integration of microtransit can be broken down into two areas: understanding the existing models and their effectiveness, and exploring the needs of the city of Peoria. Microtransit systems in Tolleson, Chandler, and Goodyear were all explored as they are nearby cities and have similar demographics. However, to fully understand integration, other cities around the US were also considered. Although they are slightly larger, cities like Peoria, Illinois, and Arlington, Texas, are great research models with the recent success of their microtransit systems. Research on microtransit systems within the state and around the country were modeled when looking at the speed and cost of integration, as well as the different funding options. Secondly, Peoria's needs were utilized best to figure out how and where to put microtransit. With the intent of integrating microtransit on top of the current transit models, ridership data and the growth of different areas within the city are taken into consideration when providing these recommendations to the city of Peoria.
The benefits of microtransit on the existing Peoria system include the flexibility of on-demand service. So customers, including late night shift workers and those with unpredictable schedules, would be able to get rides. It would also provide to remote areas that are urbanized, such as Peoria. And microtransit can also be used as a mediator that can easily be called upon residents to be picked up at their convenient locations, such as their home or anywhere outside their existing routes. And is also easy to access, like app-based trip requests that are convenient for users. As well as it's also inexpensive for Peoria if they were to partner with Lyft and Uber, so they won't have to buy new vehicles for these transportation services. As far as funding for microtransit at the federal level, formula funds are typically distributed through states and then eventually trickle down to transit agencies based on area population, existing transit service, and some other factors. And for competitive grant programs that are open to transit agencies as well as cities and states. State grant programs, they offer specifically for innovative transit services, while other grant programs focus on policy objectives like reducing greenhouse gas emissions or increasing access to jobs. But both cases are deployed by microtransit to make for a compelling application. And at the local level, this is the majority of where funding comes from. Local sources include transit fares, local government budgets, ballot measures, and local partnerships. As local funding sources are constantly in flux, microtransit is an attractive option for cities and transit agencies because it's very flexible and it can be scaled up and down to meet demand and resource constraints.
How can residents use microtransit? Residents can use microtransit by traversing the northern Peoria traverse from northern Peoria to work in southern Peoria. And citywide, Peoria has a population density of 1,127 people per square mile, and the downtown population density has 5,483 people per square mile. The average commute time to work for drivers is 29.4 minutes, and in downtown Peoria, it will be much more feasible to have bus transit. The cost for implementation of microtransit will be governed by three major factors: the cost of labor, each vehicle in the fleet, and local government subsidies for each ride. A company known as VTrans pledged $2 million to 5 communities, which is approximately $400,000 on average, and similar to how Tolleson and Chandler subsidize each ride, the city of Peoria can subsidize each ride too. An initial investment of $400,000 seems ideal to start up the project, and as a pilot year is analyzed and monitored, the local government can bring in more money every year for microtransit.
After completing all of our research, we have two different recommendations that we believe would benefit the city of Peoria and its residents. The first recommendation is to follow the WeRide model that Avondale and Goodyear have implemented. WeRide fits Peoria's needs because it sets up virtual stop locations that effectively group together residents who are headed in the same direction. This model would be great for northern Peoria, where there are not nearly as many bus stops as downtown Peoria. WeRide will have a base fee of only $2. WeRide can be integrated into Peoria's existing POGO system and fixed route bus system. Currently, the furthest north POGO reaches is the Estancia Safeway station. WeRide will act as a flexible extension, enabling residents who are in the northern third of Peoria to have convenient access to the POGO system and allow POGO travelers to continue further north than the system currently allows. The second option is to subsidize the first $15 of Uber and Lyft rides to encourage more residents to carpool. Any rider whose trip exceeds the first $15 will pay for the difference of the trip. The census data revealed that carpooling is not common in Peoria. This model, paired with the right marketing, could really encourage residents to start carpooling when traveling within the city. This model can benefit the existing systems like POGO by once again providing residents with an easier way to get to a POGO location or a fixed route bus. The largest benefit of subsidizing the Uber and Lyft rides is that this system can operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Since these drivers are almost always readily available, they can be easily called upon using their respective smartphone applications. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Miranda Taylor. So microtransit is an on-demand option for transportation. Services usually provide short rides that are requested through an app. The fleets themselves can contain shuttle buses or minibuses. Next. In order to determine the best model for Peoria's use, we have studied 4 cities. Seattle for its exemplary transportation model, Chandler, Phoenix, and the city of Tempe, particularly around ASU, are being studied due to their close proximity to Peoria and similar population density and typography. The strengths of each model will be used to create a model that would work best for the city of Peoria. So here's our findings.
Hi, I'm Nupur, and I'll be speaking about Seattle, as it is known for its efficient transit system and one of the best in the country. Seattle has consistently been on the forefront for new transportation technology. Seattle is uniquely prepared to take on to the Smart City Challenge. SDOT, that is Seattle's Department of Transportation, has a goal to build, operate, and maintain an accessible transportation system that reliably connects people, places, and goods. This transit system aims to deliver a transportation system that provides safe and affordable access to places and opportunities. As we study the map given alongside, you can see that the blue areas are the industrial areas, whereas the yellow areas are the residential areas. Moving on, next slide. The City of Seattle planning processes with extensive public engagement efforts, help identify strategies and priority transportation projects to improve safety and mobility for current users as well as future users as outlined in our comprehensive plan. Now, the comprehensive plan is what has helped Seattle grow their transportation system since the year 1935. And these are the rest of the plans that are helping Seattle efficiently develop its transportation system. Seattle Transportation Plan, Pedestrian Master Plan, Bicycle Master Plan, Transit Master Plan, Freight Master Plan, Move Seattle, New Mobility Playbook, and Comprehensive Plan. Now let's move on to the city of Chandler.
Hi, I'm Coral, and I will be talking about Chandler. So one of the things that makes Chandler a good pivoting point when thinking about Peoria's expansion is that it is so close to Peoria, meaning that we can make reasonable assumptions such as the weather is similar, topography is similar, and economic statuses may be similar. And this information allows us to make these reasonable comparisons when talking about Peoria. So what Chandler does is they use socioeconomic data, primarily consisting of population and employment, to gather all of their data and information when they talk about and think about future model projections. And MAG uses this data as well when they think about future traffic models, when they project future traffic volumes. And this is something that Peoria could do as well when thinking about the future. And Chandler also uses level of service projections displayed as LOS in the slide to determine future roadway efficiencies. And something that Peoria can do with this is use the level of service projections to determine how efficient their roads are going to be, considering how much improvements they're going to be making to the roadways by incorporating microtransit. And now we can talk about the city of Phoenix.
Thank you, Coral. This is Saurabh. I'm going to speak about the city of Phoenix. City of Phoenix being very close to the city of Peoria is a great comparison. As city of Phoenix being a very busy city, we get like a viable suggestions to expand their transportation need. The model used by Phoenix will be very informative for the city of Peoria for managing the commercial vehicle traffic, which will be expected to increase over time as the city develops. City of Phoenix uses MAG zonal data and the commercial vehicle survey to get the data points and to plan the city out. The MAG zonal data includes the number of residents and the employment by the land use to determine the trip rates. City of Phoenix uses the land use based trip model, which have an advantage of consistent set of independent variables. The truck trip rate for the land use category is calculated using the formula total study area trip to land use by total study area employment at land use. Next slide. So the city of Phoenix uses the method of survey for data collection. The survey is done using either telephone or mail survey. The city of Phoenix DMV categorizes DMV registered vehicles using various letters as shown on the slides. The city of Phoenix sorts the entire DMV file by zip code to obtain subsamples. Using the data collected, the commercial vehicle traffic on an individual land can be calculated per day, and results from this test is being proven highly accurate in the reports. While planning for the development and expansion of the microtransit in the city of Peoria, commercial vehicle traffic holds an important position on this data, as this data will help to plan the future transportation system for avoiding congestion and delay to the transit. The microtransit can easily be expanded in the area of less commercial vehicle land use. Now I'll be passing on to Faiz.
Thank you. Right now I'll be talking about Arizona State University. For the chosen of Arizona State because of one of its major generator of travel models in the valley. And another reason for choosing it is for how it's like a micro form of the city of Peoria. Since the population of students create around quarter population of the city of Peoria, and how it grows at the similar rate or close to that amount, and for it being developing models throughout the valley and specifically for students. The models used for developing in Arizona State is by surveying graduates, undergrad students, and faculty members for how they plan to plan their trips from their homes to ASU and also throughout campus if they're living on campus. Usually the trip characteristics and daily activities would go under trip length, travel time, and trip rate from interzones to outer zones and different trip destinations. Usually typically would be work, school, other activities. On the right, you'll see one of those steps would be the use of geographic information systems, which takes which keeps tracks of the trips that are being taken in different zones and inside their own zones during peak and off-peak hours. Recommendations for Peoria would be using surveys with precise data that doesn't compromise people's privacy, but also helpful for the transportation sections of it, and scaling up those models for the city of Peoria, which accommodates around the 195,000 people living in it, and using the GIS models used as that, and also expanding on the modes of transportations so that people have more accessibility during peak and off-peak hours. Next would be the recommendations and results, starting with Peoria.
Thanks, Fayez. My name is Aditya. I'll talk about Peoria a little bit about first. As you can see, the population of Peoria as of 2021 is around 194K, which is almost as much as Tempe and ASU. So the city is mostly situated within Maricopa County, but also extends to Yavapai County and is shaped like an inverted L, which poses a problem to transportation planning. As of now, there are 5 regular and 2 express bus services that connect both Peoria and the surrounding cities. There's also the POGO services that operate only on weekends. However, these are mostly concentrated to the southern parts of Peoria. Bus lines are non-existent in the north, and by north I mean north of Loop 101. And all these factors culminate into poor public transportation reach and accessibility. Next. So this is the bus route data I pulled from the Valley Metro database. The timings may not be 100% accurate to the minute. So yeah, next. The picture on the left is South Peoria's transit network, and the picture on the right is North Peoria's transit network. As you can see, the northern part has almost no bus lines except for POGO services. And POGO services only operate on weekends and every 1.5 to 2 hours. So during weekdays, that part is completely devoid of public transportation, which can pose a problem to households or individuals that depend on these services. So the southern part has decent reach, but most lines and their services after 6 p.m., which can pose a problem to households that depend on these services. So this is a map of Tempe and Glendale. So it's just a comparison. As you can see, they're more densely situated as compared to Peoria. Next. So income is an important factor when it comes to getting around. People who are below poverty line tend to be most dependent on public transit, and even people with low household incomes are also dependent on public transportation. With rising fuel prices, car prices, and other external factors, these people are more susceptible to not be able to travel. From these pictures, around 8% of Peoria is in poverty, which means 8% of Peoria heavily depends on these services. My general recommendation is that Peoria should expand its bus services in the south and add new bus lines in the north. Increasing the frequency of bus lines improves the ridership, and trip-based models are most cost-effective to handle the situation. I'll hand it off to Harmanjot. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harmanjot Singh, and comparing this to the other cities we talked about, the factors affecting the model for our city of Peoria are the population density. So population is super dense in the south of the city of Peoria, and it's lightly dense in the north. So that's why there is a discrepancy in the different bus services. Secondly, it's the shape of the city. So city is shaped in an inverted L, and thus like it runs on the both side of Agua Fria river and along with it. And thirdly is neighboring the cities that have a population that's all 55 plus, called Sun City, Youngtown, and Sun City West. And they need their assisted living in Youngtown and Sun City needs a separate transit system as well. And then it intersects with the Valley Metro routes along with it, which needs a lot of changes as well. Next slide, please. So for this we recommend trip-based model. It can be managed in a few ways, like by number of trips. So we can have less trips in the north of Peoria, and we can have a lot of trips in the south, where it's densely populated. Or for few trips, we can do we can multiply trips in the less dense area with smaller transit like minivans and stuff. And irregular shape can have irregular trips as well. For example, City of Phoenix runs north to south or east to west with their Valley Metro. For City of Peoria being irregular shaped, they might run northeast or north-south as well. And in the north, huge Lake Pleasant is a huge factor that divides a City of Peoria into different. So there might be a different way of putting a transit in place. And lastly is the Valley Metro needing different routes. So with multiple intersections with the Valley Metro, they might need to put in different stops, and they might need to accommodate according to the microtransit run by City of Peoria. Lastly, they do need a special microtransit routes for people in assisted living. People in City of Peoria, Sun City, Youngtown, they have a different type of population that's 55 plus ages, and they use their own transit system. So that might collide with the City of Peoria, and thus that need to be taken in consideration as well. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to ASU Project Cities Fall 2022 partnership with City of Peoria. Our project will be covering the microtransit scheduling. My name is Christian Corona.
Luis Corrales.
Vito Al Hassan.
Elliot Plord.
Noor Mustafa.
This presentation will be covering the following. In the introduction, there will be a short description of what microtransit is and a couple of examples of what they are. And we'll also be introducing the problem statement that was given by the City of Peoria to us for this project. Second will be a literature review covering 2 different cities that we will be analyzing that successfully implemented microtransit successfully into their transit systems. After, we'll be covering methods and the process that we use to gather our data, which gave us our results in the 4th section. After our results will be our recommendations to the City of Peoria that we thought were the best. Microtransit is a form of transportation that can be available at unique locations and times rather than taking fixed public transportation routes. An example of that would be going from directly to your house to a grocery store and coming from the grocery store directly back home instead of having to walk to the bus stop after getting to the grocery store and whatnot. Some examples of microtransit services are Uberpool, Liftline, and other private transportation companies that offer rides via mobile device applications like GoLink to the right. Problem statement provided by the City of Peoria is below and is highlighted. When might microtransit be best suited for implementation in Peoria based on ridership data trends, but also their needs? And the purpose of this presentation is to provide the City of Peoria with evidence-based recommendations that will help the city incorporate microtransit at those specific times, dates, based on this group's analysis.
For our literature review, the first city that was studied for information was Dallas, Texas. Dallas was able to incorporate GoLink to its Dallas Rapid Transit. GoLink was able to provide a massive on-demand microtransit system that used spare labs and Unwire to divide the area into zones for interpreting their data that was going to be collected. The data collected from GoLink ridership was used to generate maps of demand hotspots seen on the left. These maps are crucial to microtransit scheduling because it will show the times and places where people in the cities are utilizing the microtransit service. These maps are also used to redesign the transit routes. Data acquired in Dallas was also able to generate maps that showcase the mismatch between supply and demand for microtransit, also on the left. Understanding this mismatch will help with scheduling microtransit based on times and locations of trips taken. All the data collected from Dallas is being used as an example for other cities across the country that would like to implement microtransit systems.
The next city that was studied was Salt Lake County, Utah. The city implemented via a new microtransit service. Users are able to request rides through a mobile app or by calling a service line. The city created a survey to study the characteristics of the microtransit riders. Surveys were conducted through interviews during peak times and also electronic questionnaires. The results showed that young adults are most likely to use the microtransit service. The research emphasized that by understanding the demographics of the population, cities can target certain groups to maximize success. And by studying the characteristics of riders, cities are able to find best times to schedule microtransit.
So to get the data to find peak hours for microtransit, disaggregate modeling was used. To provide some context, aggregate modeling was used in the past to evaluate traffic data and travel data, and it provided sort of an average behavior in a geographic zone. Disaggregate modeling is more detailed and focuses on individual or household travel behavior. And this form of modeling is considered the industry standard, given now that we have the computing power for these more detailed models. And they're also known as activity-based models. So the activity-based model, we were able to identify times of departure and arrival and purpose and destination of each trip. For example, going to work, coming home from work, going to the grocery store. And then this data set was used to identify peak hours of travel for the city of Peoria. Moving along. So we were able to isolate departure and arrival times and get an accurate depiction of peak travel times through data manipulation using the statistical programming language R. The plot to the right is what was generated, and this provides a nice visual representation of the peak hours of travel. You can see a peak in the morning and one later in the day. That'd be coming home from work. And this provides lots of insight for optimal implementation of microtransit.
Going further, we prioritized home trips and shopping trips because these two trips account for more than 50% of the total activities that happen within Peoria. And 6:30 a.m. to 8:30 a.m. was identified as a peak period for home departures. That's the time that most people leave their houses to perhaps school or wherever they go within the city. And then most people return home between 2:30 and 6:30 p.m. So the graph kind of shows that pattern, and then those two times are the peak for home-related travel. For shopping, the peak, the departure peak and the return peak is between 11 a.m. and 12:30, and then 10 a.m. and 12:30, respectively. And so these times too are factored into the schedule for microtransit for the city of Peoria. We are hoping that by taking this approach, we'll be able to capture the time when demand is at its highest for microtransit services within the city of Peoria.
Along with the times or recommended times, we also wanted to find areas where microtransit could be implemented. Through the City of Peoria website, we were able to find traffic data. And the traffic data showed us road segments with the most amount of traffic. What we found were road segments along Thunderbird Road, Olive Avenue, and 75th Avenue show to be the areas with the highest traffic count.
For our recommendations to the city of Peoria, we split those up into two phases. Our first recommendation is phase 1, which is implementing microtransit between 6:30 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. and then as well from 2:30 p.m. to 6 p.m. These times correspond to the peak congestion for the most popular activities, which were shopping and then home trips. And mobility expected to be high during these times, which means that the microtransit route and system would be sustainable over time. Our second recommendation would be phase 2, basically an extension of the first phase, depending on how successful the first phase is. That would be extending the times between 8:30 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. for off-peak home-based trips, and shopping trips are expected to be peak during this time period of implementation of microtransit. The third recommendation would be implemented microtransit between 2:30 p.m. and 6 p.m. as the peak period for destination home trips. This would help reduce evening rush hour traffic congestion volumes. And then our fourth recommendation is implementing microtransit around the holidays during the holidays in this area around Thunderbird Road, Olive Avenue, and 75th Avenue, which shows the most traffic volume in the city of Peoria. Scheduling around the holidays in this area would help reduce traffic volumes and congestion.
Thank you for your time.